Hi, this is Erin from Blossy Bee. Welcome to my channel. The plan for this video is to unpack a small but exciting order from Kmart. I'm going to create some test pieces to see how my purchases work, including some little frogs. And then I'm going to create a gorgeous little frog trinket tray from leftover prints, as well as some other cute frog pieces. And I'll give you a review of the items at the end. Kmart is an Australian company. It's a department store, I guess, like a Walmart or something like that. And I just really set out to get some new pens because I love their pens for work. They've got, I think they're called gel pens or really nice roller pens. But I noticed something new on their website. This Craft UV Resin. Now, Anko have made the epoxy resin, a two-part epoxy resin before, and I've used that, and I'll link a couple of videos of that below. And I really like that resin. And I couldn't believe it when I saw that they have UV resin now. And not only that, they have the little torch, the setting light. So they have both of those things available now, and you'll see all the price information on the screen here. So the UV resin comes with a pair of nitrile gloves, and it comes with full instructions as well. The UV resin light does need 2 AAA batteries, and it didn't look that powerful, but we'll give it a test shortly. These are the pens that I love. They're just so nice to write with, and yeah, I love having them. I've got to figure out how to engrave them. Gel ink pen, that's what they're called. But lastly, I saw these. These are Resin Craft Gilding Flakes, and they were so cheap, and I thought I've got to get my hands on these and just see what they're like and what I can do with them. So in this video, I'm going to be testing these out, and I'm going to try and learn as I go along how to use them. And then I'm going to also test out the UV resin and the torch, the UV light. So pretty excited to do that. And then I'm going to make a really lovely, I think, little trinket dish using some leftover paper from a previous project. So I'll get started. I haven't had a lot of experience with Gilding Flakes, so what I thought I'd do is just open up each of them, use a little brush, as I think, logically, I think that's what I need to do. And I'm going to use this little 9-heart mould just to see what effects I can get from each of them. I'm just using paper towel to cover up the pieces that I'm not using, just to try and minimize any little bits dropping in there, because I know often when you open little jars like this, they're so lightweight and they can just sort of go everywhere. So this is the lighter of the two pinks, and it is just gorgeous. So I just tip out a little bit into the mould, and then I'm just going to basically rub my brush over it and try and burnish it in, and it does work really well. As I mentioned, I don't have a lot of experience with Gilding Flakes, so it's sort of hard for me to judge what the coverage is like, but it looked pretty good. And I used a little bit of tape to clean up any of the debris that had gotten into the other pieces. And then I just go ahead and clean my brush. I do dab it on a piece of paper towel, but I also like to clean my brush on tape. I just find if I dab it onto the sticky tape a couple of times, it really does get that extra residue off. So that could be a little tip for you if you like me, have just the one brush that you are trying to use for multiple colours. I fast forwarded this section because it's just me trying to do a nice even coat of the Gilding Flakes into each of the mould pieces, and also to try and keep my workspace a little bit tidy. Very tricky when these flakes go everywhere, but you know, that's part of the challenge, isn't it? So these are going on really quite well, and as I'm doing this, I'm starting to get some ideas for some little froggy pieces, and you know, how different colours will mix together. So I'm excited to I guess see how these come out just as a solid colour, but also do they blend with other flakes, and how do they look like with that, and also what do they look like with certain coloured resin behind them. So I'll show you how these are looking. Here we go. I think the pink's the best coverage, and I kind of gave up with the green. Whoops. Now, you will remember these from my last Froggy Friday video. I had printed out extra just in case of mishaps, and I didn't like the fact that they were sitting there not being used. So I set myself a little challenge to try and do that. First, I needed to prepare my trinket tray mould, and I'm going to try these foil Gilding Flakes and just see what sort of a look I can get with them. So I thought that I'd try for a really pretty rim around the edge of the trinket tray, and I'm also going for some colour on the back, what will be the base of the tray. This will go in behind the picture. So I'm just sort of seeing how it goes. Now, interestingly, they do not go on this mould as easily as the heart moulds. And I do recall watching some other artists having problems with getting flakes like this to adhere to different silicons. So I think that's what's happening here. It was okay, but there was no way I was going to be able to get a really even coverage. It was just not quite cling enough, but I was okay with that. So I'll just forward through here and show you what we ended up with for our decoration of the tray prior to having any resin poured. I think it's looking very pretty and very sparkly so far, so loving it. Okay, next step is I'm going to mix up some River Art Resin Deep Pour, and I'm adding in this gorgeous pigment paste in this blue-green teal colour. This is how I'm going to frogify the bottom, and just if any areas I've missed, this will be the colour that shows through. So the idea was to sort of blend it with the background of the cutout that I'm going to use. So I add a generous amount of the pigment paste into the resin. Give it a stir, checking my colours. Yes, we're on target for a froggy colour. And then I also decide I would like to add in some gold. So I add in some Just Resin's Midas Touch glitter dust, and it's a really pretty mixture. And because I'm testing out these Gilding Flakes, I decide to add a couple of those in there as well. I'm just interested to see if they break up or if they're going to show through. Not sure, but wanted to try. So I pour that into my little oval trinket dish, and then I'm going to let that cure for 24 hours before I move on to the next step. And that just looks so lush going in there. Now I'm keen to try the UV resin and the light that I've got from KMart, the Anko brand. and I unpacked both. I popped the 2 batteries into the light, and of course have to have a little, you know, flicker of the light around just to check that it's working, and it is. And I'm going to use the Gilding Flakes, and I'm going to brush some onto these little holographic frog earring or keychain molds, and I'm just going to sort of layer a few different colours in there, and then see what happens. I'm going to just use the resin as is first off. I just want to make sure that I see how I go with that. So the first experience here is with clear resin, and I have to tell you it was very difficult because clear resin is so hard to judge the level. I have mentioned this in a previous video when I made a tortoise, and it's often at night that I'm working on my crafting, and I just really find it difficult to see where the levels are. I probably didn't choose the best mould either for the first test with this, because this is a very small mould and the arms and legs of the frog are very narrow. Anyway, it's just all practice, isn't it? So after I do my best to fill these little pieces, I take the UV light and start curing it, and it works perfectly. It doesn't take very long at all to cure. In fact, it was really fast. I just held the light over the top for a minute or two, and even after about, I think, 15-20 seconds, I could feel that it was hard. Not cured, but, you know, firm to the touch. And then I just flip it over. This is a somewhat transparent mold, so more translucent mold. And so I flip it over and do a couple of minutes from the back as well. I just want to make sure that I get the resin cured from both sides if possible. So then I demold it, and I hate it. It's not the UV resin's fault, it's my fault. It's just so untidy, and that's because I chose such a teeny tiny mould, and I didn't go in and you know, move all the little legs and everything apart. I tried to give it a little bit of a clean up, and unfortunately I amputated his leg while doing so. So attempt number 1 was a failure due to user error. So of course I need to try again. So with poor little one-footed Froggy watching on in horror probably, I clean the mould and repeat the process with the Gilding Flakes, because that part seemed to work. But this time I decide to put the resin into a little cup, and I'm going to tint it with a teeny amount of alcohol ink. This is designed to help me see where the levels are and to see where the resin is moving around the mould, so I can get a more even coverage, and I can make sure that it's in all these tiny little parts of the mould. So this pair definitely took me longer, but you know, I was feeling guilty looking at that other frog the whole time, and thought I really needed to try harder, do better, and yeah, hopefully I can demold these with no missing limbs or other pieces. And the slight tint with the alcohol ink absolutely worked perfectly. I could see so much better, and I could gauge the height of the resin better, and I could also see when it was flowing into all the little pieces. So I'm using the UV light again to cure and flipping it over and giving it some time from the back as well. And here we go. Thank goodness, a very different appearance, and these were quite pretty. They still had a couple of teeny little bits of resin that I had to just pinch off with my nails, but overall, much happier with this result. Now, overall, I'm not a fan of UV resin. I much prefer epoxy resin. However, this UV resin doesn't feel, look, smell, anything, perform any different from any other UV resin I've ever used. I've used everything from very expensive resins through to inexpensive UV resins. So that's good. So here we are demolding, and it comes out beautifully. I've got that gorgeous froggy green on the base, and then we've got all of these beautiful pinks and golds, and not a lot of the green showed through, but I'm still happy I put a backing colour that was, you know, compatible with it. So here is our cutout. Now I've cut it into a circle slightly less than the width of the trinket tray, and I have laminated it, and I've made sure I've got a really good seal around the edges, and so I trim it into shape, but I realise I need to just take a little bit extra off, and that's fine to do that as long as you've still got the edges completely sealed. And then I get out my rhinestones and I think about how to blend this in with the tray a little bit better. Now I did use similar rhinestones in a previous video where I made a cute little budgie coaster, and I know that these rhinestones with resin on them, they have a really flat sort of appearance, but I'm absolutely okay with that. And so I spent a few minutes just coming up with a pattern that I really like, and then I'll clear my workspace a little bit and go ahead and use DuraClear varnish to attach both the image and the little rhinestones to the trinket tray. And the DuraClear Ultra Matte is a really lovely, easy product to use, and I know that it dries clear, so it's not going to create any issues there. I actually found this so enjoyable. There's something about sorting out rhinestones and getting the right ones and looking at them all. They're so pretty, and it was just lovely to do. I have done some rhinestone art in the past, and I do have a lot of rhinestones, so maybe I should get into that. But you know what it's like when you craft, you have so many things you could be doing. I've got some beautiful clear river resin deep pour here, and I'm using Just Resin's Pixie Magic, and this gives the just most gorgeous shimmer and shine. It's extremely fine, and it is going to just really make the top of my tray, as I'm not doming it or anything because I still want it to be a tray, but I'm giving it a top coat, and it's going to give me a really pretty shimmery shine. And you will see those little rhinestone flowers, they will go flat. It's just an effect of having the resin poured over them visually. But as I said, I'm absolutely okay with that because I know what that looks like. You can see there actually quite easily the difference. You just lose all of the details. If you wanted to keep the details of that resin, I think what you'd do is probably do a top coat, and then perhaps just as the resin's curing, perhaps add the rhinestones then sitting on top so that they don't go in under the resin. But I'm so happy with how this is looking. It is really pretty. It's very froggy and feminine. Feminine froggy. That's the vibe I'm getting. It's now time to fill in these heart-shaped moulds, and I'm using Kmart's Anko brand gold mica powder, and then I'm going to add in some Just Resins Midas Touch Gold, and this is already going in on top of the little bit of the pixie dust that we've put in there as well. And I'm just really interested to see how these will look with a gold background. And I think this blend, it's just so luscious. It's just so beautiful. And yeah, feel confident that it's going to look really pretty, whether it's just as the back piece that you see, or whether it shows through where I haven't applied the flakes completely, the gilding flakes completely. So I have enough left over that I can do the other 3 hearts on the side, and so I just quickly grab some gilding flakes, and I'm just randomly, putting some colours on just to see if I can get some pretty little pieces there. And after filling those, I then realised I've got quite a lot of resin to use, and this is great because then I can test out the gilding flakes in a couple of other moulds. And so I grab a couple of frog moulds that you will have seen before. One of them is one that I made myself, that's on the left hand side, and I made this from an Iron Orchid design mould, and it's comes out matte, which I just love it. And the other one is a frog on a leaf mould, and I'm just really dabbing in different pieces of the gilding flakes, not really aiming for any great accuracy, and I'll fill those as well. And then I decide to use that same little tree frog mould, the little earrings or key rings, whatever you like to make of them, and I put some resin in those as well. And then just the last little bit of resin goes into a little heart. So demolding time for these pieces, and they're very pretty. And little frogs. Let's have a look at these. So this is the epoxy resin compared to the UV resin, and look, to me they just better quality product with something so small and fiddly. Anyway, different people like different resins. Here's our little frog keychain, frog on a leaf, and he's quite pretty. And then this is our frog from the Iron Orchid Designs mould, and I think he looks very handsome in those colours. And now time to demould the hearts. Now, I might have mentioned in previous videos I like to have quite a lot of these made up because I attach magnets to them, and they're great for just supporting, like recently our school association Mother's Day fundraiser, and yeah, just nice to have these on hand. Now, the ones that I did as the test pieces, I did notice there's a couple of little bits of gilding flake just caught up on the edge of the resin, so they all come off super easily with my finger though, and they all look really pretty. At this stage, I think that these gilding flakes are wonderful value and really good for people who can't perhaps afford or get access to, the really good quality, big brand name gilding flakes. And here is our beautiful tray. Look at that top coat, super glossy, super shiny, and just so pretty, absolutely mesmerizing. So I'm so happy that that came out after that paper was just, left over. And this, dear watcher, is where my video should have ended. But I can't stop looking at this, and I feel like it has to go. I don't want it as a keychain. I want it as a fridge magnet. And so I just take my snippers and snip it off. And I feel much better about it straight away. But then I decide, why do I need to have that in the mould anyway? I really have a problem with moulds with pre-made, the silicone plugs to make a hole in them. So I guess I was channeling the Queen from Alice in Wonderland, and I was like, off with your head. So I snipped that off too, and once again I felt so much better as soon as it was gone. I don't know what they're going to look like without them, and I know sometimes when you remove silicone pieces from a mould you ruin it, but it's a risk I am prepared to take because it was making me unhappy, and I don't like things that make me unhappy. I would much rather have a magnet mould that I can also drill a hole in if I wanted to have it hanging from something, than be forced to have a keychain. Not forced, but hopefully you know what I mean. I was on a bit of a roll now, so the next mould to be modified is the little tree frog silicone mould. It's a holographic mould, and I'd love this to be a magnet mould too. So I snipped those parts out, and then I move on to my hearts mould. Now, I do like these hearts a lot. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just remove the little silicone nubs from half of them, leave the other half, and then I can figure out if I like it or not. So, of course, now I need to test these newly modified moulds. So, in the little tree frog mould, I'm going to use these micro beads in a purple pink colour. And for some reason I haven't got the filming of it, but the leftover of this mixture, I did put a little bit into the tree frog mould, and I also put a little bit into a heart mould. And I set this aside to cure because then I want to add a top layer to it. And I'm using this gorgeous Extreme Chameleon glitter from Harry and Wilma in pink gold green, and I think that is going to look just stunning. And of course I'm going to be really excited to see what it looks like when I demold where I removed those little silicone nubs. The heart with the little micro beads in it just gets topped up, but the others have just this beautiful chameleon glitter all the way through. And look how gorgeous they are. So let's have a look. This is the one with the little micro beads in it, and I don't love this one. I love it from the other side. You can definitely see where I've cut that piece off in that one. This one is gorgeous. You can't tell at all where that little nub was, and I think it's because I've used this really sort of complicated glitter. Your eye just doesn't get drawn to it. And I did have just a teeny tiny little bit of cleanup on this one. Now for our little pair of tree frogs. And oh my goodness, these are gorgeous. I just love them. I'm so much more happy with these than if they were, they still had the holes in them. I just think they look gorgeous, and I really want to turn them into little magnets, but I know, or I could actually glue them on to other pieces as an embellishment. Just not having that hole gives me so many more options. Oh, that's so pretty, that combination of the micro beads and that chameleon glitter is stunning. And lastly, our little frog on a leaf. Again, a little bit of a clean up on the side, not too difficult. And I think he is beautiful. Now, it's still got that curved piece to the end of the mould where the hole would have been. And I'm just looking at it. I was tempted to cut it off, but I think it also looks a bit leaf-like, so I'm happy to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me on this little crafting experience, and I'm really happy with that KMart UV resin and the UV light and the Gilding Flakes. I think they're great value. I hope you liked my gorgeous trinket tray, and I will give you a link to the Froggy Friday playlist in the description box below, along with a big thank you to all of those amazing crafters who organised this and put the playlist together, and you will love what you find in there. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.